Welcome to MGAA Conversations, our new podcast channel where we'll be discussing with an exciting number of guests all things related and topical within the ever-growing MGA community. Hello and welcome to our latest MGAA Conversations podcast. Today I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Kelly Ogley, Chief Executive Officer, Consumer and Local Commercial at Howden's Group. Kelly, great to see you again. How are you?
Yeah, really well. Thanks, Mike. Lovely to see you and great to be here.
Yeah, really enjoyed. Looking forward to our conversation, as I'm sure our listeners are. So let's kick off at the start. So as always, please share with myself and our listeners a little bit about your role at Howden's.
Yeah, of course. So, as you said, Chief Executive Officer of Howden Consumer and Local Commercial. So, to translate what part of Howden that really is, that's the personalised business, the private clients business, and our commercial business out of our branch network. So, we've still got 117 branches out on the high street and they're thriving. I'm responsible for running all of those parts of the business, which I absolutely love.
Fantastic. And just a little bit of sort of a nuance around that in terms of 117 branches. I know you measure sort of footfall. Is footfall increasing? Is it stable? How do you see that currently?
Yeah, it really varies, Mike. Some branches I go into and there's literally, no seats left. I was in
Right.
Shrewsbury branch not so long ago, and it really was genuinely packed out. There's other branches where, what our clients like to know is that we're there when they need us. So there are other branches that have less footfall, but actually get really good advocacy because clients know that when there's a claim, they can come in, they can eyeball somebody, and we're there to handhold them through the process. So really, really varied. I think COVID brought a lot of people back to local businesses, local support. So we did see a bit of an inflection point post-COVID where people actually really valued that localness. All going very well for us. Thank you.
Oh, excellent. So this is a question I know I'm very keen to get your view as well as our listeners will be. So
Yeah.
there's been an increasing narrative that broker personal lines is in decline with a number of insurers withdrawing from the sector. Zurich made a strategic sort of decision last week because of lack of scale, etc. What's your perception, sort of being right in the middle of that sector, dealing with insurers, customers and whatever, what barometer would you put in terms of the sort of health of personal lines in the broker sector currently?
Yeah, I think, the broker sector, if you've got the right answers to partner with the insurers, will continue to thrive. There's an absolute need for a different distribution model. I think as brokers, though, we can't rest on our laurels. We've got to bring something unique to the conversation, whether that be unique distribution, whether that be data insights, client segments. So we can't just sit here and assume insurers are going to want to give us capacity. We've really got to partner with them and help them with that. What is different about us? We give advice in the way that's different but complementary to the direct channels, so we can really help clients, using that local personal service. So yes, it's been tough, and yes, there have been withdrawals. I think we're lucky with our scale. We can really work with our insurer partners to continue to innovate, to look for client solutions, and we can't rest on our laurels. We've always got to be looking for the next new innovation.
Do you think, Kelly, that ultimately scale is going to be the overriding factor as we look ahead, maybe 3 or 4 years? That if you haven't got scale, then effectively it's going to be very difficult to sort of retain margins and actually get a return in the personal line sector.
Yeah, there's definitely an advantage in scale, but I also see some, really small niche brokers thriving because they're bringing a different client solution. So I think for brokers, what you've got to do is be key about what's your USP, what are you bringing to the party, and some small brokers are doing really, really well because they are experts in their field. They really know what they're doing, and then they can bring that insight to the market, to the capacity providers. So scale is important, but it's not the only thing.
Yeah, and just if I could pivot, sort of, you would have seen, as the market has seen, the recent simplifying insurance consultation, which obviously the deadline was last week, and clearly there's a direction of travel, which Matt Bruce actually referenced at our conference last week, that broker business, which is has got expert broker advice, effectively demarcating that still oversight and governance, but perhaps more proportionate and dare I say, a lighter touch, where obviously from consumer business, the regulator is still forensically focused for customer outcomes. You got any sentiments around that sort of current split, and do you feel regulation in that consumer space is proportionate, or do you feel it's slightly sort of still overbearing?
I mean, as we all know, there's been a lot of change over the last few years, and there's been some of it that has been quite cumbersome. So I think it's really important in the consumer space that we get the right protection for our clients and for the whole of consumers. And I think trying to get that balance of protection and proportionate is a fine line to tread. And I think what's really key is we work in an open way with the regulator and with the government to try and get that balance. And some of the things that have been talked about around product governance, I think, are good. It shows that the regulator is willing to work with us and listen. But equally, I still pick up and hear of examples, not from Howden, where clients aren't being appropriately looked after, and it really upsets me because our industry is there to do good things by our clients, delight our clients, and make sure that they have the protection they need when they need it. So I feel for the regulator because it is a real fine line to tread, but it does feel like we've got more of an open dialogue to get that proportionality.
Yeah, and just staying on that theme, Kelly, because obviously you're the expert in this space. So, there was commentary actually from Graham at Bieber that, when fair value was introduced, that some brokers, particularly in the personal line space, had to withdraw products purely because of the fact that trying to complete sort of, I don't know, 30 sort of fair value assessments across a number of insurers just made it uneconomical. Do you see, as you just alluded to, that, the regulator will recognise that and continue to try and ensure that there is innovation and choice for customers? Because the proportionality you reference is the fact what customers don't want is brokers withdrawing products, because then that actually sort of narrows choice, doesn't it?
Totally good. And the words that you use there, Mike, innovation and choice, they've got to be at the heart of everything the regulator thinks about. And yes, there definitely were examples. I've heard of examples. We didn't have to do that. We were fortunate. We went through our processes and we were happy with everything. But I know not everybody was in the same boat. So I think making sure that we protect that innovation and we protect, client consumer choices is critical. And again, that's that open dialogue with the regulator, where if we feel that it's not proportionate, we can just pick the phone up and have a really honest, frank conversation. And, having had some of those, I know the regulator wants choice as well. So I think it's just making sure we've got that two-way engagement and they are listening.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Just coming back to our conversation on scale, and obviously sort of the recent sort of M&A activity with Ageas and Esure, and obviously the huge sort of Aviva and DLG. Do you see that as a concern, or do you see it as a massive opportunity in the UK market?
Sure, Mike. Sort of mergers and acquisitions are just a continuing evolution of our market. I remember when I was head of M&A over 20 years ago, somebody said to me, but we're going to be running out soon. And we're 20 years on, we've still got like huge deals going on. So I think it's a natural evolution and it should be seen as an opportunity. It should be seen as an opportunity because there will be, more efficiencies, which means that we've got more to invest in innovation. And again, I'm going to use that choice word. As long as when we're doing these big deals, it doesn't remove consumer choice, I think it can only be a good thing. And I think we've just got to look at it as an opportunity and say, how can we make more out of this scale, but constantly protecting that consumer choice.
So you've got no concerns in terms of these enormous, huge personal lines organisations that they can effectively manage the market in terms of if they all of a sudden go, we need to increase our customer count and do stuff around rating, then the whole market. I suppose what I'm trying to get to, Kelly, is that if a big organisation sneezes, everybody else then follows sneezes. If they don't sneeze, is that's something you feel is just the case you have to navigate as a sort of broker, personal lines broker?
Exactly that. I think, our industry, there's always, if I think about, nearly 40 years into the industry,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
been constant change and you'll have seen the same, right? So there's always been a new opportunity, but there's always been a new threat. whether that be, from my perspective, the first threat was when Direct Line came onto the market, and as a
Yeah.
broker, it's like they were going to be the death of the broker. Now that's over
Yeah.
30 years ago. We
Yeah.
then had the aggregators. We then had insurers suddenly going, oh, I can go direct. I don't need the broker distribution to be my only distribution channel. So I think the key for brokers is, we've weathered all those storms, but we've only weathered them by responding and innovating.
Yeah.
So back to what I said earlier on, we can't rest on our laurels. We can't be, complacent that we think we're good or better than. We've got to be looking at what can we give back to our capacity providers that's different.
Yeah.
So we've got to be, giving them something unique, and that could be, as I say, reach, distribution, access, and data. Data's key. As we've moved on, and then making sure that our distribution model doesn't become outdated. So
Yeah.
as our clients' needs change, and especially in the consumer space, my mum's 80 this year. She uses ChatGPT. So, as clients' needs change, as the digital engagement changes, brokers have got to make sure we're embracing those. So, otherwise, we will become redundant. So, not being afraid of change, working with the capacity providers to give them something that's unique and different, that complements their direct channels, and doesn't look to compete with them.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic message actually, because you've just given us sort of a concertinaed history of where the broker community and personal lines have faced challenges and actually navigated through those with Direct Line, M&A, and everything else, but still is actually thriving now, which is which is great to hear. And actually, it's a case of, you quite rightly point out, is that continuously looking after customers and innovating to make sure you're providing a good alternative to what else is out there.
Exactly, Mike. And clients want choice. We keep talking about the word choice. Not everybody wants to be, totally direct, totally digital. So having something that's complementary with that personalised advice, helping people, being there to handhold them, being accessible. So it's just clients. If clients need choice, but we've got to give them something that delights them. And I know from our broker service, the advice we get repeat business, we get really high advocacy because we're giving them something different and unique, and we're delighting them.
Yeah, excellent. So bringing it back to sort of my world and my members' world
Yeah.
particularly, what do you see MGAs, where do they play within the personal line sector, and how do your team engage, and what would be your message to those MGAs in the personal line sector in terms of engagement?
Yeah, I mean, MGAs for us play an absolute vital role. So they're critical in the personal line space and the consumer space. And I think it's that partnership. So the partnership with the MGA and the broker to look at where they've got specialist products, where we've got niche needs that maybe aren't being well served by the larger capacity providers. So I think, back to one of your first questions about capacity being withdrawn from the market, I think that's a huge opportunity for MGAs to step in,
Yeah.
as we've seen in certain sectors. So the key thing is back to that data, working with us to look at client needs, to look at future and emerging risks and how we can innovate and we can quickly create products that will service those needs, but in partnership with the brokers.
Yeah, I suppose it comes back to your earlier points, the fact that MGAs are specialists and experts in particularly niche products, non-standard motor, non-standard home, thatched properties, all these areas which are
Exactly.
in the sort of personal line sector. And you as the custodians of your customers want to make sure that you're placing them with experts, not just in terms of understanding the risk and the pricing, but important that the claims delivery is relevant to the specialist and niche area of what you're covering.
Totally agree, Mike. It's almost go back to the original, need of broking. Clients need that help and advice. We need specialist products that understand that specialist client need. So, you talked about thatched cottages. We need brokers that understand thatched cottages and can talk to clients and make sure that they've got the right risk mitigations in place. But we need the MGAs who also need it, so that the building products specific to that niche, and then they've got the appropriate claims handling, because it is different to then, a two-bedroom brick terraced house. And back to one of your questions around sort of broker versus direct. This is where broker is, you really can bring that unique distribution, because you're not going to be able to place some of those niches via a direct or an aggregated solution.
Yeah. And the MGA, you touched on sort of the importance of the relationship and the data and understanding. When you look to engage with MGAs, Kelly, what other sort of areas of due diligence is it, in terms of the capital which is supporting that MGA, just an example, how important is that to you in terms of when engaging with an MGA?
Yeah, it's really important. It's the first thing we look at. So we
Okay.
need to make sure that they've got the right capital infrastructure and that they're going to be there for the long term. We're here to protect our clients and make sure our clients have great solutions. So ensuring that whoever we partner with has got that right infrastructure and is going to be there for the long term is critical, because I talked about client advocacy. Our
Yeah.
clients trust us. So we've got to make sure we do our appropriate due diligence. Once that's done, it's then all about the client needs, the partnership, the opportunities, and we can talk about cold spots. Where have we got opportunity, but there isn't necessarily mass market capacity, and that's really where we can work very closely with our MGAs to innovate and come up with new client solutions.
Yeah, I think that's a great message for our members who operate in your particular space. So, one thing, because we know each other quite well, is that I know you are an absolute fantastic advocate for young women in our industry, and you do a lot of fantastic work for that. So, again, I need to ask you this question because there'll be many young sort of our membership and listening to this particular podcast. So, for someone who is a great supporter and advocate, what advice would you give to sort of young women coming into insurance and seeking to sort of create a successful career pathway?
Yeah, this could be a podcast in its own right, Mike, because as
I
you say,
know,
I'm very passionate about it.
I know
If
you
I
are.
just if I just share a sort of quick story. So when I was in my late 20s, I was in change management in a very male-dominated environment, lots of pressures and stress because it was change management and it was IT. And at the time, I felt I was weak because I didn't shout, I didn't argue, I didn't fist thump. And around that time, I did a psychometric profiling, and it was perfect timing because it came back with a paragraph which has stuck with me for many years, which is I always achieve my objectives and goals, but I don't go about it head on. I deploy different strategies to get there. And it made me realise, and it will come back to the advice, it's okay to be me. And it took that to really make me have that confidence that it's okay to be me. Female, northern, working class background, that's okay. So my advice to young females coming into our industry is be yourself, but be yourself with practice and more practice. So don't be yourself and be lazy about it. Go, well, that's just me. I can't do that. But be yourself, understand yourself, and it's okay to be you. But then surround yourself, with good networks.
Yeah,
So I think what's amazing about our industry, Mike, is the amount of female leadership events there are, or women in insurance events. So I think females out there, look out for them, get onto them, and then you will build a great network of contacts. And you realise when you're thinking it's just you, it's actually not just you, but you can talk to somebody about it. I'd also like to say, Mike, whilst the events are badged things like women in leadership or women in insurance, we love it when men come too. So it's not a female only exclusive club, because I think it's important that everyone sees each other's perspectives. So
yeah.
yeah, be yourself, be your authentic self, make sure you network and talk to people. And if there's any help or advice I can give anybody, then please do reach out to me.
I know that's absolutely fine. And again, from your lens, Kelly, sort of 40 years ago, do you see the environment and the opportunities for women in our industry, which is still, frankly, probably male dominated? Do you feel that we're on the right track and we are improving? Perhaps not at the speed perhaps we should be, but it's you know we probably entered the industry at the same time, and I imagine your challenges were a lot harder than mine, sort of because I was a male from that bit. What's your sense now in terms of where we are now, looking forward, as perhaps where we were sort of 40 years ago?
So we've definitely improved, is the good news. I
Yeah,
remember going to a conference in London, which was a big deal for me when I was from the Northwest, when I was in my early 20s. A few hundred people in the conference. I was the only female. So we've
crikey.
massively improved. But we've got more to do. At C-suite level, I can name the C-suite women in our industry. I can't name all the men at C-suite. So, what we've got to do is look at how we accelerate that talent. And that's where, what I'd encourage all businesses to do is be clear about the gender gap at various levels. Same can go for other different areas of diversity, but specifically here in females. Look at the gender gap and then deploy strategies to close that gap. Now, you say that, and sometimes people are like, well, what does that mean? How do I close the gender gap? It can be as simple as starting to identify some women in your business who have got potential but aren't confident enough to put the hand up, and then almost pushing them or encouraging them to take stretch opportunities. And for the women out there, I would encourage you, if somebody says to you, you can do more, believe them, because you probably are lacking that self-confidence, but encourage people to really build something to close that gender gap. We're getting better. Even having this conversation, Mike, wouldn't have happened when I first started. So, these conversations, the events that are running, all those sorts of things are fantastic, but we need to accelerate it. So, I would say that when I retire, whenever that is, I'm 55 now, I want to look back at our industry and see that we've got a better balance than it is now, certainly a better balance than it was when I started, but also know I've done my personal bit to make a difference.
Fantastic. Well, great messages, Kelly, and great advice for our sort of young women who are both part of our sort of wide membership and beyond. And again, that's a very kind offer for people to reach out for you, because I know straight away how passionate you are about this, and you've done fantastic work. That's great. So look, so finally, really now, Kelly, absolutely delighted to talk to you. So let's hopefully, if you and I are chatting in 12 months' time, where it will be your 41st year, and I won't mention my time. What would you be hoping to share, sort of generally, to our listeners around, both the Howdens, the market, yourself, and what would you hope to see in sort of 12 months' time? I think the more women in insurance, I think, is a given. So what else would you like to see?
Just continued innovation, some really good stories about how our industry is doing good things. So we all want to grow, and we all want to grow and be successful. So that's sort of a given, a bit like the women in insurance, it's a given. But I believe that our industry is genuinely is a force for good. Some of the products that we innovate, some of the solutions that we come up with. So I'd like to be sitting here talking about some of that innovation and how we're helping protect clients, now, but also in the future. What are the emerging risks? We know what's happening with climate change. What does that mean for flood risks in the future? How, as an industry, are we ensuring that we close that potential future protection gap? So, I'd like to be here saying loads more women, we're all growing really successfully, but actually, what are the good things that we're doing to make sure that we get a good name and a good reputation?
Fantastic. Kelly, always the pleasure to be chatting to you. Thanks very much for taking the time, and I will see you very shortly. Bye.
Thanks, Mike.
Many thanks for listening. We welcome all feedback, so please get in touch with your suggestions on topics and future guests. Please don't forget to subscribe on your chosen platform so that you don't miss out.